Step into the world of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Where the essence of entrepreneurship is unraveled in its most authentic form. Stas Balanevsky serves as your guide on this journey of discovery and inspiration. In each episode, Stas brings together entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds to share their stories. It's not just about their victories, but more about the resilience and adaptability they've shown in the face of adversity. These narratives are more than just stories. They are lessons in courage, determination, and the relentless pursuit of success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, dreaming of launching your first venture, or an established business leader seeking new perspectives, Founders Dinner is your invitation to explore the transformative power of entrepreneurship. And now, without further ado, let's welcome the host of Founders Dinner, Stas Balanevsky.
Welcome to the Founders Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Stas Balanevsky. I have the pleasure of having Mike Davern as my guest today. Mike, how are you, sir?
Great, Stas. How are you?
I'm good. I'm grateful that you're here. So to our listeners, Mike and I go back quite a few years. And yeah, we've certainly shared some stories in private. And now we'll be able to share some in public.
There we go.
And I think it's going to be great. So, Mike, let me start with you. Let's start with your entrepreneurial journey.
If I were to look back, it probably started possibly prenatal. But my first stint was probably when I was about 7. I was hanging out with some friends. We were on a trail and we came across some pages from a particular adult-oriented magazine on the trail. And everyone was fighting over them for various reasons. And at 7 years old, I didn't really have any personal desire to have finding value in that. But I noticed how everyone was so intent on fighting over that. I'm like, there's something here. So I grabbed as much of those as I could and I started selling them. And looking around in the parents' house, I found my father happened to have a stash of something similar. And so I had no overhead, no inventory costs, all margin. And I did really well in that first venture. And I've been hustling ever since.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, you identify the talent, you lean into it. So what are you doing now?
I am co-founder of Incept. We are a tool-enabled, digital-first, full-service marketing agency, to kind of sum it up really briefly. We are just about 9 years old. We're coming up on 9 years, actually, in just a little less than 2 weeks. And yeah, it's been a journey. So I started it with actually a friend of mine since college, a college roommate, actually. And we've done a couple little things together, but we always said, we're going to get into business together. We're going to do something. And then life happened. Some other things happened, and it got me into a spot where I had to do something differently than I was at the moment I was working in a corporate America job. And Incept was born from that. And here we are 9 years later, have gone through a lot. We've learned a lot, and we've made a lot of mistakes, and we've had some good wins too, and here for the ride.
Fantastic. Congrats on 9 years. That's a milestone that many companies never reach.
True. Yeah.
So tell me about where you're headed, right? So you've found magazines as a 7-year-old. You have a 9-year-old company. A couple things have happened in between.
Phew.
Where's your true north? Where are you going?
If I can get to a point where business or businesses can be relatively self-sustaining with putting the right people in leadership to run the show, at the end of the day, I really just want to help people. And one of my passions really lies with connecting people with deep pockets and companies with deep pockets with nonprofits who really are deserving of that. I've always wanted to get to a point where I was just connected with enough people that I could help pave that road of influence. My son was born 9 weeks prematurely, and we're lucky enough that I happened to be living in Buffalo at the time, and we have an awesome NICU at Oshai, what is now Oshai Children's Hospital. And I saw going in there every day, there were so many parents who just couldn't be there every day because life interfered with that, or they were traveling from even 100, 150, 200 miles away, that really what the motivating point was from all of that experience was, I want to make sure that I can be able to help influence and fund parents being able to be with their small, sick children as much as possible. So that still is where I'm aspiring to go. And I think as the years go on, I'm hitting those milestones to be connected to more and more people that could eventually help that vision become a reality. And that would be my passion eventually.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is a heck of a facility. Both of my boys were in there as well, and pretty thankful that I live in Buffalo.
Yeah,
right.
We're lucky for that for sure.
Yeah, back in the day, I worked in the medical world, and we don't know how good we've got it here.
Mm-hmm. And mixed with all that, I've got other ideas that I want to monetize, which will help for that mission as well. So I guess there's some steps in between too, but I want to get everything with Incept running to a point where a couple of the other ideas I have, I can really flush out and see how they stick. And you know how it goes. You got a good few ideas, and maybe one will stick and really be the one that gets you to the point you want to be. So always thinking, always ideating on those. And I know we've had a few of those discussions over time of, hey, what do you think about this?
Sounds like a true visionary.
We're both having those all the time. A lot of those conversations.
Well, that's the joy, right? That was also the whole idea for the genesis of this and of the actual founders dinners that you've been to a couple of, that you get a bunch of founders together and, oh my gosh, right? You wind them up, you let them go. And every now and again, a really cool idea comes out of it. Sometimes a lot of silliness comes out of it too, because when founders kind of let loose, it's fun. But,
well, you get the right group in a room. None of us take ourselves too seriously. So,
yep.
Absolutely.
So to those aspiring founders that are listening, please never lose that desire to have a really good time.
Absolutely. And if the fire burns out, then you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, well said. Yep. So speaking of fire, right? We sort of dance in the fire because the frying pan is just too safe. And I'd like you to go back in your head and find a story for me, somewhere where you were like, I'm pretty sure it's going to go this way, and it did not. I want to hear about a stumble, a misstep, a wrong turn. Let's start unpacking something that didn't go the right way.
It's a great question, because we all know that we learn so much more from screwing up than we ever do from being victorious.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel very wealthy in terms of the level of screw ups that I've had over the years and the amount of learning I've had from them. But I'd probably go back right to the start of Incept. And when I won't get into all the details, but I was consulting with someone with a new technology called SMS all the way back almost 10 years ago. And it's amazing just how quickly technology evolves. And also when you see markets where they're not quite ready for new technology to come in, we happen to live in one of those markets where we're just a little bit behind. If you even take a Rust Belt kind of a view from, say, like maybe Albany to maybe Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and some points in between, we tend to be technology enabled a couple years behind some of the other hotspots in the country.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we launched the business saying there's a better way to do this texting thing, we did some research, but there was a lot less in the marketplace at the time. And we chose to go with a company. I'm not going to say who it is, but what we were looking for was the ability to white label a text marketing platform and sell it really from both the very small business space all the way up to the enterprise level. So mistake number one was we were niching down, but our goal was way too wide. So looking at that range from small businesses to enterprise, all very different needs. And then adoption is going to be different as well based on where those companies are based and also what their goals are. And when there wasn't as much competition, we doubled down. We saw white label and we bought this package this company provided called Mobile Marketing Company in a Box. And I remember the exact price. It was $5,000. They promised us the world. We got a website. We got social media profiles built. We got the texting platform with credits that go against the selling those out and reselling them at a margin to potential clients. Well, the website was a free Wix site without even a company URL. It was like I don't even know if Wix even has that anymore. The Wix site.
So it was like wix.com/incept.
Like wixsite.com/ wow, we missed the mark on this. Please buy something from us anyway, which is what the URL might as well been, right?
Oh my God.
And so we got it and we're like just scratching our heads like, what the hell did we just pay for? And We tried making it work for about 3 months. So that's misstep, I think, in this process, number 2 or 3, is
Mhm.
trying to make something we knew wasn't what we wanted work. It didn't work. We ended up finding another partner. It worked much better. And then we were able to move on from that. But the big mistake there was not just the 5K, which, yeah, the $5,000 package would probably cost us 150K in revenue. Not realized. I would say it's a pretty expensive lesson.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Okay, so 150K. So let's call that tuition. How do you get to that 150K?
When we looked at what we were projecting, when we looked at a couple of sales we had early, that we were reliant upon the technology working, that we had bought the way that it needed to. So not only the fact that our marketing footprint was awful, we're in marketing, we're starting this kind of tech enabled agency and our footprint sucks. So we come out of the gate not looking good. But
Mhm.
despite that, because of some of the people we knew and some of the connections we had, we got some business. And one of those pieces of business was a 75K commitment from a health insurance company in downstate New York that never got off the ground because the tech, once we started using it, was so awful. And so we had to just start all over again. And then we found that secondary partner and we started adding more services into the mix. But when I look at that 75K, plus when I look at what we were projecting
Right.
based on just numbers we were getting from research that we were doing, that, yeah, just looking at one big client. And then we needed 5 or 6 other clients to make up for that, what we were looking at in year one, about 150K in top line revenue. It just wasn't realized. So we went almost a year with very little top line revenue.
Ouch.
Yep.
So looking back at the facts that you used to make that decision, right? What was the fact pattern? What did you miss? Or what
You
did
know,
you
I, th-
not do?
I think we didn't do enough research. We didn't dive deep enough into enough research into partners. It's a very different world now. Review sites like G2 and Trustpilot and Capterra were all just starting at that point as well, starting to gain traction. The great part now is that you can really, really easily review a tech stack that's peer reviewed and know whether or not you're getting into a situation that isn't fantastic. You can go and see, okay, this tech stack has a 4.7 on G2, which is no different than maybe if we're shopping to look for a restaurant to go to out of town and we're pulling up Google Maps and we see a high rating and we have that trust and we'll go with it. Those pieces of information just were less readily available. And we were quick to start and did not do enough research. And that was a super expensive lesson, but also a really valuable one too.
Got it. So here's one thing that whenever I hear people say do more research, the bells and whistles that go off in my head is analysis paralysis. So now that you understand that you need to do some more research, how do you prevent analysis paralysis where you find a different way to lose $150,000 because you're head down in the research instead of
Yep.
like doing the work?
Well, I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not usually the one bogged down by research.
But I know your business well enough.
Hence the start where it was, right?
Right.
I think it's more, and you'll hear a lot of people refer to that 40-70 range. I think Colin Powell actually termed it in terms of that part of making a decision. You need at least 40% of information to start making that decision. And if you hit 70%, you're too far beyond and you might lose out.
Mhm.
I think it's more about making sure that we're within those goalposts because that's where the sweet spot is. And I might tend to jump at 20 or 30% to say, let's just play with this and see what happens. And the nice part is I have 2 business partners who help temper that side. And then I'm the voice on the other side. If we're getting towards that 70%, I'm like, guys, we got to speed up here. We're not going to win if we don't get to this decision point. So I think when we're looking at the research, we have a good balance, and analysis paralysis will never be a problem for me. But that first lesson was I didn't dive deep enough. We didn't dive deep enough to really know what we were getting into and really seeing what a big risk we were taking. And so that's a mistake that we learned a lot from and we'll never make again. But
So
if there's so much information out there to research now so quickly and easily, that's the enablement, is that it's everything's at our fingertips. So it's a bit of if we're looking at a tech stack, especially, shame on us for making a wrong decision, because even though there's tons of options, there's tons of really good options, and you go with the flow and see what's working. And much like we promise our clients, if something changes, we're going to change it up. And we've done that several times throughout the path of our journey with our company. And just like we talk to clients, whatever I tell you yesterday, if it's something different tomorrow, I'm going to tell you tomorrow that what I said needs to be adjusted or we have to go a different route. And we've learned from that. And we drink the exact same Kool-Aid, I suppose, when we're looking at how we make those decisions.
That's really awesome, because that's my next question is, now that you've learned that you need to do the analysis, how have you applied the lesson and scored a win or scored lots? I mean, I know you scored tons of wins. Tell me some of those stories where you did do the research and found that gem.
I'll go back to that inception piece and talk about when we switched tech partners. So even though we didn't win with that 75K reserve for a big client, we found another client in the space that was more of a broker to the space in health insurance. And we threw in that text messaging stack. And we learned, had we not learned the lessons from the misstep, we would have never been able to implement it properly. And we worked with this client for 3 years and helped them drastically increase their efficiency. Basically, what they were was a lead aggregator for the health insurance industry for people who are shopping for Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
And where their challenge was, is they were gathering information from form fills from websites and those TV commercials you see, like call this toll-free number and learn about Medicare now. They were capturing that data, gaining permission to remarket to these folks. But when they went to call them, no one was calling them back. And so we entered the text message where basically in the automation, it was, we tried calling you, we didn't reach you. We'd like to talk to you about what you were looking for. Touch here to call now in the text message. They would see a 10x, 20x even increase in phone calls within 2 to 3 minutes of that text message going out. So we really were able to, we had a good tech stack and we were able to help them win. And they had, no exaggeration, they had a 3x increase in their sales enabled support and actually closing business.
Wow.
With the tech stack that we threw in. And as things go on, they actually baked it into their own system on their own, which is what's happened with text messaging. So we're not as directly providing the technology to clients anymore. We're still in the space, but we add that into the mix with customers and clients we're working with. And more often than not, we see that there's something enabled within whatever their stack they're using now, whether it's their CRM or some other system they're using, where that piece is baked in, and but we've been through the ringer, so we know how it works, and we really are good at making those programs work. So I think we continue to provide a lot of value, even if we're not selling the technology as much anymore.
That's awesome. Any chance you would have been able to do that had you not bought the wrong package initially?
Probably not. So that's part of the lesson, right? And so even though it was an expensive lesson, I can talk about all the other things we've talked about, even between the two of us, with even personnel decisions and things like that, trying to double down on a position that just wasn't really a fit for our company and needing a couple people to come in and out and cycle to realize it wasn't a fit.
Right.
We need to know that. So even though these lessons can be costly, it puts us in a spot almost always that is in a place where we were better off than we were when we started.
Yep. It's always just tuition. And sometimes you have to skin your knee and it sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of value in bleeding, Stas.
A lot of value in bleeding. Yeah. This isn't one of those lessons where you can be like, oh, he didn't do this, so I need to not do that and I need to do the other thing. No, that's a mistake you have to make.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sign up with the wrong partner. You just have to cut bait quick.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's the key. Like a bad hire, a bad direction, a bad whatever. So here's a founder thing that is, again, there's so many of these dichotomies, so many of these like false indicators, right? Unwavering determination in a direction is why Steve Jobs did the things that he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yet here's a couple of middle-aged plus men saying, if it's not going to work, kill it.
Yeah.
He had 85% of his company saying that's not going to work. And he said, hold my beer and watch this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all have those moments, right? We'd all love to be where Steve Jobs was in his position, where he really was able to double down on that. But nearly everyone who has been that successful did it really outside of the main line. They weren't following, this is how it's always been done. They weren't listening to everyone. They had a few key people that they trusted in their inner circle usually, and they didn't go market by committee for sure, right?
Oh, no way.
Because that never works. We all know that.
So maybe that's the answer. Maybe you can have that unwavering, unflappable commitment to the thing that you're going towards when the rest of the world is saying you're a nut job, because you have an inner sanctum. You have a group of people.
Yeah.
That's the key. So, boy, vetting that group is pretty important, huh?
It is. And also, it's no different than what I was talking about with potentially replacing a piece of technology. What I said yesterday might not be as good today, and this new thing is better. And so let's do it. I think that group evolves over time as well. Sometimes someone digs down into a position that just isn't congruent with where you want to go. And even though you're trying to listen to everything that they're saying because you value their opinion, the opinion just isn't what needs to be influenced in your decision. So having a couple of those groups to go to, or just evolving who is in your inner circle over time, I think is a must as well. I think we all know that even though we have a couple people in the core, there's probably 3, 4, 5 people on the peripheral that the cast changes over time.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sort of looking at my gut check group, and you're in it. Is this crazy? I think that's one of your superpowers. And I've been doing a lot of work lately on Shirzad's program with positive intelligence. And one of the things that they say is the people that you're drawn to are the people that would look at a project or a problem and talk to you about the 10% of the damn thing that'll work versus the 90% that won't.
Right.
That's one of your superpowers, where you look at something and you're like, this part of it is really, really cool. The rest of it, I don't know, but this part's really cool. And let's build on that.
And that's really all you need. It's no different than if you look at whatever an audience might be. Yeah, 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago when we started, and 7 or 8 years ago when we met for the first time, a lot of it was just throwing your stuff out to as many people as possible. Right. Almost the way traditional branding works. Oh, if we build that billboard and 100,000 cars drive by it a day, somehow we'll have a lift and it'll work. Now we really doubled down into, for sure, that the quality of the interaction of the audience is much, much greater than the quantity. And that works with our inner circles. That works with everything. It also works with an idea that, yeah, you know what, if we can boil down that 100% idea to the 10 or 20 or 15, whatever percent it might be that's going to work, you can blow something up with that little sliver. Just like if you build the right audience for whatever it is you're trying to push out there, you just need enough people to evangelize that little bit. And an idea really works, in my opinion, the exact same way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's a creative way of putting what you do in your day-to-day together with the ideas that you have.
Yeah, and it's always a challenge because there's the 80% or 90% makes the most noise, right?
That's true.
And sometimes that 10 or 15% is the quietest, but that's because that piece of it is what really where the core of where the most of the substance could come from. And so it's about, I think a lot of times, about just eliminating all the noise and interference and really understanding a clear focus on that little piece that is the nugget out of everything else.
That's amazing. That's great. That's great insight that I need to think and process. Need to think on that and process a little bit.
I like to think about everything in reverse.
No, so I know. But that's the whole thing, right? Like the reverse Pareto principle, like in EOS, we always talk about the 20% of the process that gets you 80% of the way there, right? We document the predictable so we can humanize the exceptional, right? If you read Gawande's like checklist manifesto, checklists are given to a lot of the most brilliant people because you want them not thinking about any of the stuff that's on the checklist. You want them thinking about the other stuff. A good buddy of mine is an airline pilot, and the value of me isn't making sure there's enough fuel in the jet. Like the value of me is when we get struck by lightning, what to do, right?
Being the one to stand up in the holy crap moments where we don't realize, because that's how we're cut. We don't realize a lot of people aren't like that.
Right.
So to know when the fire's burning, the quickest thing to do is to grab the extinguisher and not read the instructions.
Yeah, that's usually true.
Yeah. So, and I think even when you're talking about even the going back to the 80-20 rule, one of our core values is actually always be on the better side of 20. And that is speaking to the 80-20 rule, because depending on where you're spinning that, 20 is either great or awful, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the pieces we instill within our company and our culture, is that our goal is to always be on the better side of that equation.
I like that. That's really cool. What's the core value gift that you give when you recognize someone for excelling in that core value? Do you just hand them a 20? You're like, here you go, dude.
But it's interesting you say that, because I have been known to just hand people cash just randomly. So I will certainly do that. It's a mix of praise and spiffs and recognition. I think maybe coming from my psychology background, the best reinforcement schedule is one that isn't predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So a mix of things works really well on that.
That's amazing. So many nuggets, so many questions. Would you be against people getting in touch with you to ask you more questions?
Not at all.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing the nuggets, sharing the stories. I'm sorry you got kicked in the teeth with your initial tech stack, but you got a beautiful smile now. So
it helped us. It helped us be where we are now. And we could talk all day.
Yeah.
There could just be a podcast and you're kind of heading in that direction about those lessons learned. There's just so many stories, and it's for most of us. And I've listened to every one of your episodes that you've put out so far.
Thanks.
It's so more interesting to listen to someone who really has been where you are, and you can relate to those things. And we all relate to our learnings far more than we do our victories. Even though the victories are great, I don't get jubilant about a big win. I expect it, if that makes sense, but I learned so much more from the other side.
Well, the wins are required to keep the lights on and to
Absolutely.
feed all the families you're feeding, right? That's your job.
Yeah.
Your job is to win. So when you don't, you better be learning.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate being on the podcast. And with that, this concludes this week's episode of the Founders Dinner podcast. For those looking to connect with Mike Davern, CEO of Incept, his link is going to be in the description. And this is Stas Balanevsky signing off, and I will see you all next week.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Founders Dinner, stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Once again, we've journeyed through the inspiring and challenging world of entrepreneurship with Stas Balanevsky, uncovering stories that illuminate the resilience and adaptability at the heart of success. Each narrative shared today is a testament to the unyielding spirit of our entrepreneurial guests, providing lessons in courage and determination. We hope these stories have not only entertained, but also inspired you. Whether you're taking the first steps in your entrepreneurial journey or are a seasoned leader in the business world, Founders Dinner is more than just a podcast. It's a community of learning, inspiration, and connection. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insightful episodes and join our vibrant LinkedIn community to continue the conversation, share experiences, and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. Until next time, keep embracing the entrepreneurial journey. This is Stas Balanevsky, thanking you for being a part of the Founders Dinner family. See you at the next dinner.